Good morning, everyone. Kevin, thank you for that kind introduction. And there is no question that President Trump's historic victory was possible because of the incredible work that you do at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you, Kevin. We're here today for one simple reason. America's greatest companies have long thrived on a straightforward yet powerful principle: hire the best person possible for the job. That's how these companies became engines of innovation that have delivered windfall profits to shareholders and changed the world in the process. From Ford's Model T to Kathy's Model 3 to NVIDIA's GPUs, American companies have always punched above their weight. And they do that because they hired the best and brightest, and they never apologized for it. In recent years, however, many of these companies have been captured, infected by a new orthodoxy that rejects the time-tested principle of meritocracy, the time-tested principle of hiring Americans on what they bring to the table. They've instead embraced something new and toxic: hiring on race and gender. Here are just three examples of companies in the S&P 500, the most illustrious stock indexes in the world, who have now been captured by this orthodoxy. The first is a $20 billion consumer discretionary business that says that their goal is, quote, for 1 in 3 new corporate salaried positions to be filled by BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. The second is a $56 billion industrials company that says that they want, quote, 40% gender and ethnic diverse representation in sales and management roles. And finally, a company I'll speak about in detail in a little bit is a $150 billion consumer brand that is known around the world. They want to, quote, achieve racial and ethnic diversity at least 30% at all corporate levels. This is what we call hiring quotas, and they are no way to run a business in America. It's a betrayal of merit, a rejection of the values that made America great, and a perversion of sound business practices. In America, the color of your skin and the body you were born into have absolutely nothing to do with what you can bring to the table. When companies impose this new orthodoxy, they close themselves off to Americans who could bring tremendous talent, expertise, and perspective to that business. Instead, those Americans will be barred from contributing for one reason: their race is seen as privileged, their gender is considered inconvenient, and their sexuality isn't diverse enough. This new orthodoxy of hiring on race and gender that has captured American companies, make no mistake, it is not for the benefit of few at the expense of others. It hurts everyone in the process. First, it hurts the qualified men and women who are not deemed diverse by blocking them from gainful employment and the opportunity to contribute to the company's mission. Second, it hurts employees who are hired under this quota, who may not be qualified yet or are extremely qualified, only to have the water cooler conversation in the break room be about the latest diversity hire who was hired as a token candidate. And finally, it hurts shareholders who have invested their hard-earned money into these companies that end up earning subpar returns by running their businesses like a Model UN tournament as opposed to a profitable enterprise. I'll tell you, the destructiveness of this new orthodoxy, it's not some academic theory that's going to take years to pan out. The evidence of how toxic and destructive this actually is right in front of us. Of the 500 companies in the S&P index, 36 maintain these anti-meritocratic racial and gender hiring quotas, and the consequences of them are undeniable. Diminished innovation, inability to compete across industries, and a corporate culture that treats employees like tokens in a 21st century caste system. These 36 companies, they span different industries, from tech, healthcare, financials, consumer goods, and more. They employ over 3 million people and have a combined market cap of nearly $3 trillion. Despite their differences in products, services, and markets, they share one critical flaw. They reject meritocracy in favor of forced diversity, and their returns are suffering as a result. Year to date, a portfolio of these anti-meritocratic companies has returned just 12% compared to the S&P's 30. Over the past 3 years, the anti-meritocratic bunch has returned 17 compared to the S&P's 60. And this isn't just one or two stocks holding down the index. It is the fact that this is a widespread systemic issue. Over the past 3 years, 70% of these anti-meritocratic companies have underperformed the plain old S&P 500. And so it shows, it's shocking, but I'll tell you the truth, it's not surprising. When great companies that depend on great Americans to build a great business throw hiring standards out the window in an attempt to outwoke one another, the inevitable result is mediocrity and underperformance. Allow me to get specific and talk about one of these companies in particular. It's among, as I said, the most recognizable brands in the world. It's a $115 billion business, 38,000 stores, $36 billion in revenue, and nearly 400,000 employees who serve 15 million customers, including me this morning. Starbucks is a great American company. A great American company that has lost its way. Over the past 5 years, while the S&P is up nearly 100%, Starbucks has returned a paltry 16. Its problems are many, but they center around 3 core issues. 1, insufficient staffing that leads to longer wait times, and Asaf, we felt it this morning, and as a result, less inclination from the consumer to show up. 2, a degraded customer experience that we've all recognized. Look, Starbucks was a cherished third place, as they say, where friends and family would come together for Bible sessions to catch up over a latte or a frappuccino. Now their industrial operations pumping out everything from pink drinks to nitro cold brews to egg bites. And finally, Starbucks suffers from a failure to meaningfully innovate around their central value proposition, and that's to provide excellent customer service. Look, these issues are deep and diverse, but a common thread emerges among them. People. People are at the heart of what Starbucks does. People, like Nayeli this morning, who prepared my iced doppio, are what makes Starbucks Starbucks. And sadly, Starbucks' hiring policies prevent them from hiring the best and brightest people. Allow me to read directly from page 11 of Starbucks' Global Impact Report under the header Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. Quote, in the US, our goal is to achieve racial and ethnic diversity of at least 30% at all corporate levels and at least 40% by 2025. We also aim to achieve at least 50% women at corporate, 55% at women in retail, 30% women working in manufacturing. 2 questions. How did they come up with these numbers in the first place? 55 in retail, 50 in corporate, 30 in manufacturing. It's almost like 6 feet of social distancing. 15 days to slow the spread. But guys, it's real simple. What on earth does racial and ethnic diversity have to do with selling a good cup of coffee at a profit? What on earth does this hiring quota do for shareholders? On November 11th, we decided to ask this question to Starbucks. Ask them, quote, how do you see your hiring diversity goal boosting shareholder value? How does the new iPhone boost shareholder value? How does the new pair of shoes boost shareholder value? How does this hiring quota boost shareholder value? It's a good question. And November 15th, we heard back. Quote, James, we believe the strength, diversity, and inclusiveness of our workforce are significant contributors to our success as a global brand. We are furthering our mission, promises, and values by creating an elevated partner experience around the world, which includes making Starbucks a great place to work for every partner. We believe expanding workforce diversity brings new perspectives and experiences, which improves our business and workplace. Notice how in a question about shareholder value, the word shareholder, Peter, wasn't mentioned once. Not mentioned once in that word salad that would make Kamala Harris blush. But we can sit here and go on and on, examples of how Starbucks has lost its way. But I'm here to say that there is a silver lining to this mushroom cloud. And that's this. In August, Starbucks' board of directors fired their CEO and appointed a man by the name of Brian Niccol. Brian, make no mistake, is a skill business operator who successfully turned around Chipotle. When he turned to Chipotle, it was a $7 billion company. Today, it's a $70 billion company. He has a proven track record of diagnosing the issues that deeply afflict a business and fixing them fast. He has now been handed the mission of reviving Starbucks, a cherished brand in need of a transformation. At the core of this revival lies a simple truth. Who Starbucks hires, retains, and promotes will unequivocally define its future. Brian, there is no revival of Starbucks when you reject meritocracy. Starbucks must ask itself a really simple question. Are we going to hire the best and brightest, or are we not? We often give Starbucks a pass. Businesses like it, these $100 billion publicly traded companies with big, impersonable, inscrutable, monolithic beings. We give them a pass because we're reluctant to criticize things that just don't make common sense. I mean, imagine for a moment, Ethan, I was going to tell you we're going to open a coffee shop together. Great location you got there in Wynwood. Good cup of coffee, a good brand. But just as you were about to invest in my coffee shop, you tongue-in-cheekly asked, we're going to hire the best baristas, right? And best cashiers, right? The best bakers, right? And I said, no, Ethan. My goal is actually to achieve racial and ethnic diversity of 30%. In that moment, I think everybody in this room would run for the hills. Your heart would stop, your pen would drop, and you wouldn't give a penny to me for two reasons. One, it is unethical to treat Americans differently because of the color of their skin and their gender. And the second, it is a one-way ticket to destroying the value of a business. It is no secret that companies like Tesla, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, the greats, do not employ these hiring quotas. They don't because they need to hire the best and brightest. They do hire the best and brightest, and they will never apologize for it. And so, Ethan, if you're not going to invest in my coffee shop, why would you invest in the SPY fund or the IVV fund, these publicly traded S&P funds? Because we know that 36 of those companies, of those 500, are pursuing policies that are anti-meritocratic and are fundamentally, quantifiably hurting the business. So here's where things stand today. 36 companies in the S&P that announced these policies. We will meet with them publicly and privately. We announced this morning that Starbucks is our first target. And I'll tell you, we're coming in good faith. We're not here to coerce anybody. We're not here to call anybody names. Brian, Starbucks, these other 36 companies, they have been a part of our great American story. They've lost their way. But, Kevin, as good people of faith, we recognize the power of redemption. We don't hold people to account for a mistake that they made. We judge them by how they respond in that moment when presented with new facts and evidence. Here's how Azoria helps. Azoria, in the first quarter, will launch the first of its kind ETF that any American can invest in. We call it the Azoria 500 Meritocracy Fund. Pretty simple. It buys the same exact stocks in the S&P 500 with one exception. It does not buy any company stock that uses anti-meritocratic racial or gender hiring quotas, either in promotions, hiring, or pay decisions. And our thesis, like any trade we might put on, is simple. Companies that hire on skill and ability will outperform those that do so on race and gender. Our coffee shop is not going to do as well as the coffee shop across the street in Wynwood that hires the best and brightest, no matter where they come from, how they look, what rigid caste system they fit into. And so our ETF is going to do two things, we hope. The first is it's going to outperform these plain old S&P funds that you may already have in your portfolio. We know millions of Americans do. Why? Because it's going to cut out the anti-meritocratic crap, cut out the laggards, and allow you to have a larger position in companies like Tesla, like NVIDIA, like Microsoft, like Apple, the winners who are winning and not playing woke games. The second is a bit more ambitious, but Varun, I think we can do it. And that is we want every company in the S&P 500 to become a meritocracy again. We're going to make our case in the marketplace of ideas. I suspect Kathy will do it on X as well, the platform du jour. And we're going to use it, not with name calling, but with the actual evidence, facts, and case studies that back us up. To the companies in these 3 dozen, Asaf and I tell you this. We come in good faith. We don't seek to hurt you. We want to help you unlock value by doing the right thing. While companies like Starbucks will be, as it stands, excluded from the Azoria Meritocracy ETF at our launch next quarter, they are never permanently banned. Our goal, Brian, is to help you see the value of meritocracy with our evidence. We will meet with you anytime, anywhere, including, of course, at Starbucks, to show you how meritocracy will help transform this cherished American business. The shareholders of Starbucks and these 3 dozen companies we've identified, they deserve better. Americans deserve better. You know, when we hear the word shareholders, our mind often goes to the billionaire hedge fund manager, I don't know, David Einhorn, for example. But that's not the reality. Shareholders are everywhere. They're everyone. They're the truck driver in Cincinnati who's investing for retirement, the nurse in Coeur d'Alene who's saving for her kids' college fund, and the English teacher in Fort Lauderdale putting aside a little each month for her children and grandchildren to live a great life. That English teacher was my grandmother, Helen Fishback. She passed in September at the age of 97 and had incredible intuition when it came to investing because she blended curiosity with common sense, something that guided her through life. This is the common sense that most Americans embrace. And when you think about that common sense, the common sense for most Americans, Kevin, when we walk on the streets, whether it's even in DC or Coeur d'Alene or Cincinnati, if you ask people, do you have to choose between hiring the best and having a representation that looks like America? No, you don't. Because espousing that view that you have to pick one or the other assumes that certain races are ill-equipped for jobs, and we know that not to be true. Every American can bring something to the table. And so this trade-off doesn't exist. We saw it this summer, by the way, in Paris. The U.S. women's gymnastics team cemented its honored, hallowed place in history. Simone Biles, an incredible African-American woman, dominated the vault and floor exercise. Sunny Lee, the first Hmong American Olympic champion, delivered exceptional performance on the uneven bars. Together, they led our American gymnastics team to an astonishing 5 gold medals, 2 silvers, to showcase the unmatched depth of American talent. There's no quotas on the gymnastics team. No mandates for representations by race. The U.S. team prioritizes excellence above all else, and in doing so, it naturally reflects the diversity of this beautiful nation. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when meritocracy is the standard. Diversity is a natural byproduct of excellence, as opposed to a replacement for it. At Azoria, we believe that Americans from all walks of life can contribute their skills and talents, blessed by God, to America's great companies. And no one should ever be excluded because of something they can't control. This is the essence of meritocracy and the foundation of greatness. In 1831, Alexis de Tocqueville came to this young nation to study what made us unique. What he found was extraordinary, a society where opportunity and meritocracy flourished, where hard work and talent determined success. Tocqueville didn't just admire America's strengths, he understood her challenges, and he really did have a way with words. He wrote that America's greatness lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. It's time to get to work. Thank you very much.